Well, Dad, it's good to have you back.
It's great to be here.
We are in our podcast studio, our new podcast studio. We've kind of got it set up so people who are listening, they go, oh, it looks the same. But all around us is
So different.
So different. There's cables everywhere. There's
Ladder over there.
Ladder. So it looks like we're back. We kind of are back, but it's not quite there yet. But it's fun to at least be back at the
That's
table.
our offices because we were attacked by a raccoon.
Yes.
So we delayed a little bit.
Yes, he did quite a bit of damage, and Mom is not happy because
I just saw a ceiling tile that has his claw prints in it.
There's
He's trying to
we're
get
still
it.
finding it on the windows, and
he defiled.
a construction person left the door open, I think, and the raccoon got in, was in here for several days.
And he
Couldn't catch him.
defiled Mom's office.
He peed all over her furniture.
All of it had to go. It's so sad.
Let's just say if Mom sees a raccoon in the road, she might.
She's gonna run it over. She's
it.
gonna swerve toward it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Very true. Well, it's been an eventful month. Last few weeks here.
Yes.
You were at the Minnesota State Capitol, and you led a rally, and actually,
I did.
We're surprisingly, so I'll kind of.
I didn't lead it. I was part of it.
Yeah, you didn't lead it. Sorry, you spoke at it. We can give people a little bit of backstory of what happened. So, I don't know how long ago it was, but there was a
last year's session, so a year ago.
That was when they passed this law that basically did not put a religious exemption for anyone who wanted to hire people based on their gender ideology. It was a protected class, but historically, similar to how they have sexual orientation, they said religious institutions, they don't need to hire people that don't align with their beliefs, and they knew that sexual orientation was that, so they had an exemption. When they passed this law about gender identity, they did not include this exemption.
Correct.
So the conservatives said, oh, that must have been an oversight.
Because they would have been in conflict. You could do it based on same-sex attraction, but you couldn't do it on gender identity.
Right.
And so they were in conflict, and they said, oh, you want to resolve this.
Right. And so they said it must have been an oversight, and that's when kind of the firestorm started, where the Democrats said it was not an oversight. It was very intentional.
Yes.
We think that it's time for you to stop being old school in your thinking. Just
Worse than that.
Yeah.
I mean, they even compared it to slavery and racism and said these ideas have to leave. These are done, and we knew what we were doing. We intentionally left it out because your thinking, your religion, your ideology is wrong.
Right. And so that started, obviously, as you can imagine, that started quite the firestorm on X, and between the political parties and religious institutions started getting involved, the Catholic Church being one that really was leading the way in this conversation, saying, no, we can't have this, not have a religious exemption. It's against the Constitution. So, of course, that we ended up going to the Capitol, and we're sitting in the chamber when this was being discussed, and they ended up tabling it. And again, this is all from Minnesota. For those listening around the world, this is in our state where we live. And so we were at the Minnesota State Capitol, and they tabled the discussion and said, we're not going to have this discussion. It's already been decided. It's law. So then we were trying to advocate that this changed, and they ended up adding back the religious exemption. And I think to most that was really surprising.
It was a shocker, but it was...
But it was what we asked for.
It was what we asked for, but it was a shocker, and they were not going to add it back. But then they realized they had a trump card in the ERA amendment that would actually negate everything for religion. So they thought, all right, we'll throw them this one. And we know that this one's coming in 2 years, and we're going to put gender identity and abortion in the Constitution, and we're going to leave the church out, which they left the church out of that. And so they knew, okay, we'll stop fighting these people. They keep showing up at the Capitol, and we know that when we get this one, it will trump everything else, and we will win. So let's just get them off of our back right now.
Isn't it funny that President Trump has changed the word Trump? Because you've used Trump now twice.
But it's actually Trump card.
I know, but I'm saying that because of Trump, it has changed our...
What do you call it?
No, you're using the correct term. All I'm saying is, like, when you're talking about things that are happening at the Capitol and such, and then it's like, oh, the Trump card, all I can think about is like, oh, you're not talking about Trump. Anyways, it's a random tangent. But as this is happening I mean, you're pretty vocal on X as a private citizen. You're
Correct.
talking about what you care about. I think there's also, we can talk about the difference between the Johnson Amendment. There's people that I think are wondering, are you allowed to talk about this? Or are you not allowed to talk about this? People saying, if Pastor Rob talks about this, he loses his tax exempt status. People that are not fully knowing the law. But what are you, why do you feel like you wanted to speak out about this, that this was the time? And I will just say, what is happening in Minnesota is happening all across the country in constitutions. So if people are not aware of this, it's not just Minnesota.
It's happening.
Most places.
It's the play that is going to happen.
The play is to change the constitution in the state to make it harder for the ideology to be pushed aside because it's in the Constitution.
Yeah, and while we were sleeping, this happened.
Right.
And everybody is saying, oh, but, both parties are fine. Both parties, there's bad in both parties. But what they don't know is there's a full agenda to do this. And I finally just had enough. And the reason why I had enough was it's not just like we disagree with you. And it's not like we would like you to say we're okay. It was literally, we're saying you're wrong. And not only are we saying you're wrong, we're saying we're going to change the laws to trap you in your faith and make it illegal for you to hold your religious views.
Do you think that for some, they might say that's a little bit of an overreaction to what's happening?
I'd say wake up, open up your eyes, look at what happened in Russia, read Gulag Archipelago or whatever, however you say it. I was reading a quote, talking about Russia, and everybody was afraid. They wanted to hold on to their freedoms since they didn't realize what was happening. And then next thing you know, communism comes in, and people don't even realize Russia wasn't communist. It wasn't. It came in that way. They used to have freedom.
But what did I mean, I don't know. I'm not a Russian historian, but what did the freedom look like there? Because I think the biggest distinction that we have in America that I think makes Christianity so interesting in the party system is we have the Constitution that is written, the Bill of Rights. Many of those Bill of Rights align with things that are things from the Bible. There are others that are not, that are unrelated. But I do think there's this uniquely American problem that is this intertwining of having a voice, having a constitution, but also having the Bible. There's some who say, don't involve your religion, the separation of church and state. They shouldn't be involved together. But I think there's just a muddiness right now that people are struggling with. And again, you've just identified, hey, I'm going to get in. I'm not going to, legally from the pulpit, you can't endorse a candidate or a party, but it doesn't mean we can't.
But it happens all the time.
Well, it does, yeah.
In liberal churches, it does. And I'm just going to call it out. In liberal churches, no, in liberal churches, it does. They'll have them come in and speak and say, vote for them. I was preaching in a church, which will remain unnamed, and they were fanning themselves with Biden-Harris fans in the church. They gave them out to the entire congregation.
I remember the Creflo Dollar. He had Stacey Abrams in the church.
Sure.
And he said, we have the next governor of Georgia in the church. He goes, you know what to do. You know what to do.
Right.
And it's like, so obviously it is happening out there, and there aren't people that aren't being prosecuted for it. But it's still, again,
You've opened up so many things that my mind has gone 100 miles an hour.
Okay, well, just start throwing things out.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, like, people are worried about the Johnson Amendment, and the Johnson Amendment was there because Johnson didn't want people attacking him or people of the party. And what you don't realize is for years and years and years, pastors used to give a sermon before the election and say, it was like called the election sermon. And it wasn't about election like Calvinism. It was like literally talking about the country and the values that they have and what should happen at the ballot box and who should be voted for. And they would attack leaders. And you look in the Bible, there's people that attacked political leaders. People say, oh, Jesus never said anything. Oh, yeah, he did. He called Herod that fox, which was a derogatory term. He could have said, I don't want to say anything about Herod. I'm remaining neutral. And he didn't. He said, you tell Herod that fox that this is what's happening. John the Baptist called out Herod, and Jesus didn't go, could one of my disciples go talk to John and tell him that is really stupid? We don't do that in the kingdom. No, he didn't. John the Baptist literally called out Herod and lost his head. You see these when it comes to paying taxes, he's like, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to God what is God's. So there are his disciples were involved in paying taxes, but I mean, you look at this and you say, America, that's what I was going to. America is a unique thing. Democracy is a unique thing. There is no democracy in the Bible. We have
Right.
no example of that. We have kingdoms, okay? And so anything that you compare to is a kingdom or a republic with Rome, I guess, however you want to say it. But still, they had a Caesar, which they said Caesar is Lord. And so they were oppressed. And so even, I mean, I'll throw it out there, even like Preston Sprinkle and other people that are writing books about Babylon and this and that, we have no example of anybody living in democracy. And it's literally in a democracy or a republic, which we are, you have the right to shape the country you live in. And if you're not active in that, somebody else is shaping it. And to say Christians shouldn't shape the country, really? Do you not set up your house? Do you not set up your clothing? Do you not set up your family? Do you not pick your own diet? Do you not say, I want a good life for me, my family, my kids? Like you don't? You don't set up your yard? Yes, you do. You set up everything. But the thing we don't like is that it makes us politically labeled, or we don't appear to be neutral. And it's hard because we don't want to call out people that are doing things. We don't want to say, hey, abortion is wrong. Hey, but it's forgivable. Like God could forgive you, but it's wrong. It's sinful. It's taking a life. It's murder. We don't want to say, hey, that does not lead to the abundant life. There's nowhere in the Bible for same-sex attraction, for somebody to be gay and to act out on it. To battle it, yes, but to act out, no, it's not there. We want to be liked. And so everybody wants to say, oh, but the devil is in both parties. Correct. He is. But one is promoting like flat out evil things. And then they say, well, God, Jesus is not a Republican. They got all their sayings, you know.
But what about, I mean,
Which he's not. Jesus is not a political figure. He's King
well,
of Kings and Lord of Lords.
I think that's the challenge where people find themselves when you mentioned Preston, and he's been on the podcast before talking about different issues. But where does it become an idol? Where does it replace? Because I mean, I think there are, like, we all would acknowledge that there are people and churches that have made, whether it be Trump or whether it be the Republican Party. Certainly that happens on the left as well. It's not exclusive. You know, we have progressive universalist religions that are, you know, everything. I mean, people wearing the garment of, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's like a pride flag garment over that as they preach, you know. And
Sure.
So it's like there are people on both sides of this that make an idol. But how do we know that it has become an idol versus it's a tool for me to live out my faith? Because I think it's very difficult, and we've talked about this before, but the family calls me the family liberal because I question things, and
and you're not liberal.
I'm conservative, but I just think, like, how do we know that it's not become an idol in our life to where we've used the political battle to be the tip of the spear rather than be the word of God to be the tip of the spear? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't see that. I mean, and maybe people say, well, you're blind. But I've yet to go to an evangelical church anywhere in America where they said, if you'd give your life to Trump or give your life to MAGA, your eternal life is on the Republican. Never. It's always Jesus. It's never changed. So anybody that says they act like Trump their savior, no, they don't. Jesus is their savior. They still preach from the Bible. They still ask people to give their life to Jesus Christ. When it comes to their living conditions, however, they say, I would like living conditions that allow the following things. The freedom to worship my God in the country that I live in. I get a right to vote on that? I'd like that. I would like to see life defended. I'd like to be pro-life. I would like to see whatever. And they have issues. And why is it wrong for you to talk about some issues, but okay to talk about other issues? Like, nobody says, look at those churches that are just out cleaning the park and acting like, you know, Greenpeace is the way to save humanity. No, it's earth. We're just taking care of it. Nobody's preaching salvation in any other name other than Jesus. And I think
there are definitely people.
Well, yeah, that's an evangelical, because evangelicals get the
I think there
bash.
are, but I think the big difference between the main lines and the evangelicals, and I can't remember if it was Keller, but I was listening to it in my grad school the other day, and I mean the biggest difference is main lines are let's do good works to then win them over to Jesus. Let the good works that we do, the care that we do, the love for our community that we do, let that be
which I would agree with. But you were talking about your living conditions, which is so unique to, if you're in a communist country, which I've been to many, you don't have a right on your living conditions. They are dictated to you, okay? So you have no voice. You literally keep your head down and you keep moving forward. Okay, then you get to socialist, you have some voice, and there's a lot of things that you might disagree with, but you really don't have any power, but you go along with it and you try to make the best of it. We live in a democracy where or a republic, really, which it is, that we get to make our own country. And whoever has the best voice and the best argument wins. And so why wouldn't you want to have a voice and an argument in a country, like literally? So I get to do my good works, and guess what? I get to say, speeding over 80, we don't want to do on the freeways. That's dangerous. So I'm for that law. Hey, feeding these people, good. Hey, we don't want people homeless right next to the school injecting with drugs. Let's pass a law and move that along. We get to set the rules. And so all we're doing is saying we get to set the rules. And the fact that people don't like moral rules makes them say, hey, be quiet. The church should be quiet. But there's rules that are being, we have zoning laws.
Well, I think the challenge to me comes in if Christian people have the majority, which in the historic Christianity, from the beginning to until late 1900s or late 1990s, into the 21st century, really the Christian majority was leading the way, whether they were liberal or conservative. Many Christian values. You even see Barack Obama in his 2008 campaign. There were a lot of things that he said that he would never come close to saying today. He'd be labeled a lot of things.
Yeah.
So there has been a shift since 2008 specifically. But I think the difficulty becomes when Christians are not the leading voice anymore, when we are now the minority of the decision makers in politics, in our civics and everything, but we're also not in a dictatorship. I just feel like we're finding ourselves in a unique spot to where the voice that we have is no longer as appreciated as it was. It's no longer as valued as it was. We still do have a voice and a say. There are places in America where it still is very Christian and very conservative. And again, some people would say those things don't go together. Overall, it does. But again, in some of these other nations, you have true dictatorship, true authoritarianism. So you see scripture, it's a little bit easier to apply because that's what they were living in.
Right.
As we go down in this, I just continue to see this challenge in applying the biblical principles to when you're on the decline of when you used to have influence and now you don't have influence, and are we trying to hold on to influence that we lost ourselves? Does that make sense what I'm trying to get at? It's unique to me that we were kind of this Christian stronghold nation that was known, again, through all of our sins and through all of our issues, but now it's going the other direction, and it just seems to be a difficult way to apply it, to say, how do we hold on to that even?
But we're not even trying to hold on to power. People are saying that. They want to hold on to power. People just want their freedom. They literally came to America for the freedom to worship. That literally is the reason that they came here for.
But what if freedom is now 80%? People don't want.
But it doesn't matter. When people wanted to be irreligious, we could let them be. What they wanted to be atheists, we let them. Why can't they just let Christians be Christians? Because it's salt and light, and they can't stand it. And you made me think of something else, too. You talked about Keller. Like, if people are going to be involved in the community, like Keller was a registered Democrat, okay? He was a registered Democrat. And he said, hey, if you wanted to get anything done in New York, you had to be a Democrat. Okay, great. You have to be a Democrat in order to get something done in New York. But did he ever call out the Democrat Party, or did he always call out the Republicans and the conservatives? And I know that he's not here to defend himself, but I'm saying what I see is punch right, kiss left, and then say you're a moderate. And it's really fashionable to punch right, kiss left, and say you're a moderate. And that just infuriates me. Like, call it out on both sides. And and I like what Tennyson said the other day. And Tennyson, I love him. Like, he's a brilliant theologian. He's probably a little more Switzerland than I'd like, but
Well, when you're a theologian, I was texting with him yesterday, and he was talking about some of the topics that we were going to discuss at conference. And he goes, I'd really like to talk about that. But when you're a theologian, I think you want to be more tactful. And
Absolutely.
But that's where I feel like there are people that like him, and you mentioned Keller. Keller had that theological bent. He also came from a mainline or a different background than we did. But do you think that that's just different wiring of people?
I don't mind it. No, I don't mind if you're tactical. I don't mind if you're tactical, but you have to be tactical in all directions. But Tennyson said this: we should be a la carte, which I agree with. I'm a registered independent. I'm super conservative. But if you were to talk to me about my thinking for the poor, if you were to talk to me about taxes, if you were to talk, I mean, you would find that I am a la carte. I'm all across this, so.
But how do we express that? Because I think the difficulty in a two-party system in the U.S., and again,
Correct.
I know it's like we can't solve this on a short podcast today, but I think that is the challenge, to where you've just mentioned, hey, I want to be a la carte. I think that's where most of those people, even those who would lean a little bit more left, be more moderate, would say, hey, I want to be an a la carte Christian. And there are certain things where I say, if you believe that, you've lost orthodoxy, you don't believe that's true. But there are people who believe that. If we have women pastors on our team, they say, you've lost it. You're, if you believe in speaking in tongues, you're not
The problem is the a la carte, I think, has left the building. And again, no, it has. Because Tennyson illustrated this. Like, if you look at the Supreme Court justices, they used to be approved like 90% or more. Both parties, 90%. And then it became political, and it became barely, if you have the majority, you're like talking 1, 2, 3, 5 vote majority to get these people in. It's become political. And this is what our forefathers warned us against. They said, if you started to love party more than country, you're in trouble. And we're at that point where it's party more than country. But I'm not a politician. You know what? I'm a pastor, and I'm here to be salt and light. And for me, speaking up was pastoral. And I had an evangelist arguing with me the other day. You were with me. We were at dinner and in Singapore, and he was saying, if you're expansion, you don't want to talk politics or issues. You want to talk only Jesus, only Jesus, only Jesus. Because I'm expansion. I'm an evangelist. If you're a pastor, you have a pastoral heart to protect the sheep from the wolves. And I said, well, I feel like my heart is becoming more pastoral, but I still am evangelistic. But I want to defend the sheep against the wolves. I don't want to be forced into transgender ideology. It's funny. I have more in common with Riley Gaines. I have more in common with J.K. Rowling. I have more in common with Bill Maher. I have more in common with these people right now with the way that they're defending
in that issue,
gender ideology.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm shocked that, like, where are the people that are standing up and going, come on, the emperor has no clothes? I mean, who was it that wrote that years ago? It was Hans Christian Andersen, I think, that wrote the emperor, like the story about like the emperor.
I know the story. I don't know.
And the little kid's like, he doesn't have any clothes. And it's like, oh, how dare you? Like, somebody speak the truth. But it's shocking to me to see what's happening in our country. And for me, it was like, I have to stand up, because here's the thing. On the gender ideology, you're asking me to lie. You're asking me to lie. And if you ask Christians to lie about that, you can ask them to lie about anything. You asked me to peaceably get along with gay marriage. And I said I disagreed with it. I thought it should have been civil unions and marriage. Lost that battle. Live in a country that I lost that battle. Got doxxed, got attacked, got hate websites. But I said, if we open that door, here's what's going to happen. Sure enough, everything I said that was going to happen has happened. It's in the process. Yeah. It's close. So it's coming that direction. And so I said, okay, we'll peacefully get along. I won't perform that
What
marriage.
you said, by the way, for those, you were saying that it was polygamy, pedophilia, and bestiality were things that are all, again, those things have...
And I didn't even think of gender ideology. Think
Right.
about that. The fact that, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't even think of gender ideology, and now it's being rammed down our throats.
When they renamed polygamy to polyamory and polyamorous relationships.
And thruples and, I'm just saying.
I know.
Like, so it was like, okay, I disagree with you, but I didn't win that one, but you're not asking me to lie. You're asking me to be different. Now with transgender ideology, you're asking me to lie. No, you're not asking me. You're demanding that I lie. And like when I shared about the guy from the United Nations, that our country is withholding food from people. Matter of fact, I just met with multiple leaders from across Africa, and I shared that with them at dinner. I'm sitting there with leaders across Africa, and they all said, yes, what is wrong with your country? They are demanding that we go along with it. These were leaders from Africa, and they were shocked at America demanding that we do transgender or we starve their people.
Withholding aid, yeah.
Withholding aid. And I mean, so I was like, wait. Now you pushed us. And I guess I look at Daniel in the book of Daniel, like there were plenty of things that were immoral. I'm sure the king was committing adultery. I'm sure that there were a lot of scandal and a lot of things going on. Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, keep our heads down. It's not our issue. That's between him and God. That's his issue. It's his kingdom. It doesn't affect us all. But as soon as it affected them and their faith, then they stood.
When I think that's probably the difference of people right now is some would accuse you of seeking out wolves, versus protecting the sheep, and a wolf comes, you protect your territory. And others would say, oh no, that Pastor Rob he's going after the wolves. He's going to the wolves' territory. He's on the offensive rather than being on the defensive. But then I think you'd have other people that would maybe even be on the further side say, no, there's wolves all over the place. There's wolves in your camp or in your field. You've got to find them. Like they're disguised like,
right.
Little Red Riding Hood. And so to me, I think among believers, that is a distinction right now that people are trying to make is like, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And until it affects me and my church, I'm going to keep preaching what I'm preaching. I mean, someone said that to you the other day. I'm not going to get involved in the way you are. Why do you think there is such a difference among believers? Like among people who are not Christians, of course, there's all sorts. There's conservative people, there's progressive people, there's all sorts of in between. But among Christians, I mean, the spectrum, and when I say Christians, I mean like true Bible-believing Christians that would agree on the orthodoxy. They might go a little bit left, some go farther right. Mm-hmm. But why do you think those people who agree theologically on most things are still so far from how they communicate about this? Is it just personality?
But I mean, think about personality. It could be maturity in the faith. It could be understanding. It could be confusion on how to handle it because you've never been there before. But I mean, where I shared in the one service, Apollonius and his followers were always willing to say Caesar is Lord. And so the Romans were like, see, Christians, why can't you just say Caesar is Lord? Because Apollonius can do it. There's always an Apollonius that's willing to compromise throughout history. You look at World War II with the Nazis. There were denominations that were like, hey, we're just going to sing and keep preaching while they take them away in the trains and incinerate them. And there were others that were divided, like we should try to kill Hitler. There were others that were like, no, we got to trust and just stay low. And so there's a divide on this. Nobody knows how to handle it in this freedom era that we're living in. And then you look at today, and there's a human nature to be like, I want to do a sermon on this, cancel culture. Because think about the guy that was born blind and then he was healed, and then they ask his parents, they're like, hey, who did this? And, and they're like, and it says, fearing that they'd be kicked out of the synagogue, they said, ask him instead. They were worried about being canceled. Think about Naaman. When he gets healed of leprosy, he's worried about being canceled when he goes home. And he goes, like, God is my God, God of Israel is my God. I'm going to bring some dirt back with me, and I'm going to put it under my prayer mat. When I pray, I'm going to be praying to this God, not that God, so I don't get canceled. There's always been a fear of getting canceled. Paul says, like, we shouldn't fear man, we should fear God. And if I want to please man, I won't please God. So I think it's a tension there. And then we also feel like if we stand up, will we win people over, or will I think that's push them away?
That's probably one of the strongest arguments I think that I see is that people saying, and I actually agree in a lot of ways. I think that there's different contextualizations, even among us. We go back and forth just like we are now, but saying what is right and being young and trying to figure it out. I think that people are saying, I don't want to push people away who don't know the goodness of Jesus, who don't know the goodness of the
Right.
gospel, who literally have no experience with the real Jesus. And I don't want them to assume that he is a MAGA, Trump, womanizing. I mean, you even see a lot of people that are immigrants to this country that, or people that live outside of the U.S. where we meet on global teams, and they think that Christians are the Kardashians and are the Hollywood people.
Oh, it's terrible.
And their perception.
They think America's Christian, and they wonder, what in the world did we do to Christianity?
Right. And so I think there are a lot of people that are feeling that way of, I don't know, I don't want to talk about these things to push people away so that they miss the real thing, which is the gospel. I want to give them the gospel first and then let the gospel change them, which is what we see a lot of times in the New Testament as well. But then you also see Paul talking about all these things, but he was talking to the church. Would he call it the people? Again, there's just a lot of questions I think people wrestle with. And again, you've decided, and my goal for this podcast is not to say, everyone has to be like you, but I think giving yourself a chance to say, this is what I feel called to do.
Mine was when they forced us to lie, and they were coming after us to force us to lie. I don't want people in our church to have to lie to live in America. It's okay to say, no, I don't agree. I don't think that's a guy, and I don't think that's a girl. I actually think that's a confused person that really needs compassion and understanding and help, But instead, it's like, no, you will say it. And so to me, it was forcing people to lie. And then I would just say to somebody like, okay, where's your line? Where's your line? What's going to wake you up? So is lying's a big thing to me. So is lying your line, or is taking one of your kids, is that the line? If they take one out of your home, or is forcing you to say that Jesus is not Lord? At what point, where's your line that you go, no, I'm not going to live there? Because, and people get me all wrong. They think I think the church is in trouble. The church isn't in trouble. The church is going to continue on forever. I just happen to think living in freedom and having the money to fuel world missions and having the freedom to worship God and having the freedom to influence the laws of the land and having the freedom to travel wherever I want and make donations to wherever I want to fuel the Great Commission, I kind of think that's a good thing. And if one political party is coming against that and the other one's like, do whatever you want, I'm not saying they're Christian, they're just like, do whatever you want, I'm going to gravitate to the ones that says do whatever you want, and I'm going to fight against the one that's trying to stop what I do and allow me to go. Now, you'd say, just trust God. Don't worry, it's all Babylon. No, I get it. The kingdom of God is moving forward no matter what. But I would rather live in a safe house than a house that's being violated. I would rather have less drunk drivers on the road than a lot of it's just stupid. People say, don't worry about it. Well, do you not worry about drunk driving? Do you not worry about criminals? Do you not worry about guns? Do you not worry about, really? It's all good? Of course you do. And you lock your door at night when you go to bed, and you know what I mean? And you buckle your seatbelt in your car. You do common sense things to keep your life moving forward. So this attitude of we shouldn't be involved and who cares and it's just Babylon at the end of the day. It's not the kingdom of God. It's where we live, and we get to make it good or bad. And so I find it disingenuous from people that are like, don't worry,
Yeah, no, and I think everyone's going to have a different line and find themselves in different places. And you've said, this is how I'm going to live, and this is how I'm going to stand up for our church. And I do appreciate, and again, I've asked questions that rile you up. I don't mean to do that, but I know you're passionate about them.
But I haven't. What people don't know is I really haven't dabbled into it much, other than when Trump versus Hillary, and when that happened, I said none of the above. I said I don't like either one. Was my answer. I said I don't like either one, but I got to look at these values, and I got to vote policies over person. And then when it's Trump Biden, I said again, policies over person. We get two choices. Now there's a third choice. You could say as a matter of conscience, I can't vote for either one. I'm going to vote for third. But by default, you're letting somebody
The hard part, though, is when you do look at the third party candidates, there's equal flaws there as well.
Oh yeah,
you know. And
but
so
you just might as well write your name in
Right,
because
yeah.
you're the only one that can run
Jesus
for president.
Lord.
Jesus for president. You know, he's not winning, by the way. But
the last thing, I just want to finish the story that we started at the beginning with the rally, and they ended up, the Senate and the House of Representatives ended up in such chaos and confusion at the end of the term, or the end of the legislative session, that they ended up not getting to that constitutional amendment in this legislative session. And so whether some would say it's the Lord produced chaos like Gideon's army.
I literally had somebody tell me that
Yeah,
this weekend.
yeah.
They said the Lord produced chaos and it kept it away. Because if they don't know, the ERA amendment, which was not ERA, it literally would take away all the gains of women.
It was Equal Rights Amendment, but basically what it said was it codified abortion into law, codified gender ideology, and then there's some debate on the religious side. It definitely did not include religion.
It did not
in
include
there.
religion,
However,
but they said it was in the Constitution.
I'm kind of on that side that it's in the Constitution, but I know what people mean when they say if you included everything else and not religion, it obviously had some agenda to it. But at any rate, that ended up not getting passed. Now, will it get passed in the next session? Who knows?
But what's crazy is it did. It was chaos because a Democrat senator in our state got arrested for breaking and entering into her her stepmom's home. Her dad passed away, and she went at 3 a.m, dressed in black with her flashlight covered, and broke into the home to steal some things that she said were rightfully hers.
Right.
She got caught, and that's a felony. She should have been
But she's not been convicted yet, right? It was just,
she wasn't convicted, but she was at least caught and admitted. They have her record because you know when you get arrested, anything you say, it becomes public record.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's why they say anything.
Yeah,
you
but
say
it becomes public record, and we
you.
had her public record.
Right.
Like she's like, I did something wrong. Plus, we knew it. Plus, she's a leader. Plus, any other job with any integrity would have suspended the person with pay probably while they investigated it and waited for the case. But I mean,
I don't
so
know
at any
much.
rate,
Yeah.
they left her in, but that week delay caused chaos. And then a Democrat senator protested the Uber thing and went AWOL for like 2 days and delayed the vote. And so they ran out of time, which incidentally, by the way, now the Democrat Party today or just recently has just said, the senator, she needs to step down. The one that got arrested, but they let her vote through the session.
And I would say either Democrat
they
or
both would do it.
Republican, they would for sure.
They both would do it.
that.
But if you saw, they were like, well, we don't know what she did. What they just should have just come out and said in the hearing, hey, we've got power and we're not going to give it up. And she's going to probably get convicted, but we ain't giving it up.
Yeah.
But
either
anyways, so it stalled out and now it has to start over again because they lost the time. So it has to start over again. But when someone shows you who they are, they show you who they are. Like, trust them, believe them. Like, they're not lying. And so we know what the plan is. And by the way, the enshrining of abortion was going to be, you have the right to be pregnant or not be pregnant or not stay pregnant. That's how they were going to put it in the vote.
Right.
That's so disingenuous, which when I was at the Capitol, I wish I would have called out this because I would have called out Governor Walz because he says he's the most pro-abortion governor in America. And I would say
you said that, but I don't think you said it by name.
But if he says he's the most pro-abortion governor in America and he thinks it's the greatest thing in the world, then put it on the ballot like that. Don't say you got the right to be pregnant or not be pregnant or not stay pregnant.
Yeah, Walz would say, well, I don't write the laws.
Yeah. Well, it's a trifecta.
Well, we need to end because this is the most chaotic episode we've ever had.
It is. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I want to summarize with. Because I just want to say, first of all, you got to do what God has called you to do, okay? And God is not Democrat, Republican, or independent. He's King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and it's his kingdom first that we're building. The only political involvement I get involved in is just for the place I live in and the people that I am surrounded by. I want to make this world a better place, and I don't think it leads to good things to make people lie, because if you make them lie. And then lastly, figure out where your line is and how you can be involved. And you don't have to be afraid to speak up. I have so many thoughts. I think of even when Carl Lentz was asked about abortion. He's like, well, yibbity, yabbity, yibbity. You know, hey, it's okay to say, oh, I'm pro-life. I believe life begins at conception. I really believe that. It's okay to say that. But see, not if you want to be in the cool kids club. but I don't want to be in the cool kids club anymore. I want to be in the, yeah, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. And you know what? It leads to the abundant life, this life that I'm living. So I'm not a political advocate. I'm not an activist. Guess what? Since that session has ended, I haven't done one thing with it. I have been preaching the kingdom, traveling the world, working on missions, trying to start 600,000 churches around the world. You know, that's what we're here for. And I'm praying for the election season because it's about to get more chaotic.
Well, we will pray against that chaos, and hopefully those listening I mean, if you made it to the end of this episode, congratulations, you made it to the end.
And please register to vote. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, thanks for giving us your candor as always, and until next time, we're in our studio-ish with all the ladders and cables and everything, but thanks for talking church, Dad, and it was a fun time. Hey, thanks so much for listening to Talking Church on YouTube. If you like this podcast, would you like this video so more people can find it, as well as leave a comment? We'd love to know what you liked about this episode, what was most meaningful to you, as well as other topics you'd love to see in the future. And of course, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss an episode. We have awesome episodes coming up. I also want to send you an invitation to River Valley Conference. It's July 8th and 9th, and we are in for an amazing treat because we have Sammy Rodriguez coming. If you've never heard him preach, he is a preacher of all preachers. He's coming. We have Dr. Alan Tennyson coming back, who's going to share his theology wisdom. We have Johnsel and Jenna from Elevation Church that are going to be leading worship. And we're just so excited for all that's going to happen. Of course, Pastor Rob will be there. I'll be there. We'll have amazing breakout guests as well. So if you have not signed up, sign up for River Valley Conference. And we hope to see you here in July. And we hope to see you next week on next week's Talking Church episode.